Okay, hello everybody. My name is Chuck Madden, and this is the March 12th Government Relations and Communications Committee meeting. And we are ready to begin once we say hello to everybody. We would like to welcome Abby, and Dr. Babson, Mr. Batsler. I thought you were going to give me a hello, Michael. And the audience, of course. And I'm just going to kick it right over to Michael because the meeting today is we're discussing our annual legislative breakfast. Or do we, when do we get with our?
Public comments still.
Okay, well, you can do your introductions if you have that first, and then we'll public comment, and then you can get into the meeting.
Yeah, I have no admin remarks for this evening, and if you wanted to approve the minutes, I guess we could do that. Oh, okay. I'll let... Oh. Okay.
Is there any public comment?
Good job.
Good afternoon. This is Roberta Winters, 326 Williams Road in Rosemont. And I know as members of the Government Relations Committees, many of you are aware of the history of the Radnor Township School District and what happens around elections regarding school board candidates and local officials. So I think it's really important for this committee and those members of the administration to remind school board members and other members of the public about our policies regarding political campaign events and campaigning on district property. There are certainly considerations given to both professional staff in terms of what they can and can't do, and also to members of the school board and also to members of the school community and the kinds of things that can be said in public events on school property. And I think it's really important that in promoting fair elections that the school board remind its members of those policies and also the professional staff and administration so there's no cause for concern. Thank you.
Thank you. We will take that under consideration. And I think we'll spread it even further with the candidates who are running. We'll make sure that they get the information and that they understand what can and cannot be done. And I would like to get your discussion about this, not right now, but in the future, is the polling places on school districts. I think that's something that, do we still have them on ours that are open?
Yes, so we do. We are, several of our buildings are used as polling locations. Actually at our facilities committee later tonight, there will be a brief discussion. There was a request to have, really it's the only building right now that's not being used, though I think there is possibly the middle school was only being used temporarily, is my understanding, while the library was being done, and there's a chance that could be moving back, is my understanding, but I don't have all the facts on it. But we are a polling location. It does present challenges to us, and that's what we're going to talk about at facilities a little bit. Because we're a polling location, what happens is we have the days off. So as much as we want to support, you know, what we believe is everyone's civic duty, at the same time as a school district, it does prevent challenges for us that we have those days off just to, you know, when we look at parking and the logistics of it all.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, Michael, it's over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. As you mentioned earlier, the substance of our meeting will be discussing the legislative breakfast coming up on April 5th, Friday, April 5th at 7:45 at Radnor Elementary School. This is to give us a quick recap, it's the 6th annual legislative breakfast where we invite our representatives to join us for a casual conversation, over breakfast fare and coffee, and we just talk about topical educational issues and we hear their perspective on these issues. And today we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the potential topics we could bring forth to the representatives. We like to give them a heads up prior to the event so they can have some time to see the agenda items and the topics of discussion and, get some information if they need to on those topics. So in recent meetings, we've discussed a couple things that we can bat around now as potential topics. And so I'll just name those and you let me know if those might work. We talked about the PA Schools Work campaign and the whole push surrounding the resolution we just passed in February, the whole push to get adequate funding for our public schools and students. So we wanted to have that as an agenda item. Does that work for everyone? Does it sound good? I mean, that seems like a pretty obvious one, at least this year. We thought of potentially special education funding. So, in response to your visit to NSBA, and we could talk about modernization, IDEA funding, what's the funding relationship between federal and state, and we thought maybe the Education Law Center could help us with that information, perhaps, so we could have something in our hands prior to trying to engage in that conversation, especially if we have federal reps come. We did have some interest in, as I mentioned earlier, Congrwoman Scanlon's office sending a representative. So if she comes, it will be good to know that relationship. Sure. And then we talked potentially education legislation to watch. So that would allow us to have a sort of umbrella topic where we could put in certain bills that are bubbling up, such as HB 526 and SB 34, which are both about cyber charters and the funding of cyber charters, and I should say the reimbursement that districts could potentially receive if they host or use a cyber charter that would qualify for being, the district receiving the funds as opposed to just giving them out to a different school district, or I should say a different entity. And then there was maybe a talk about school safety synopsis and talk about Act 44 and see how that is being rolled out on the state level in terms of how the process is going, what kind of feedback they might be receiving. We can certainly expand on questions we might have around school safety and also the mandates that have come through that act and how those mandates have impacted school districts. And those are kind of the four that we initially came to mind, and I welcome the rest of the committee to bat around some other ideas. So it starts at 7:45 is the actual breakfast portion, and then we kick off around 8:15 or 8 o'clock to actually have the conversation, and then I think it's 9 or 9:15 is when we are going to break to do tours.
Right. So my own opinion on that, I think we have an adequate amount of topics to discuss within that time frame. So
Okay.
far, unless somebody has something urgent that we would like to talk about, or when we're there, I don't think we're limited when we have a representative who's there, and if there's someone that's in the administration or the board or one of the students wants to talk about something specifically to somebody, that's that's their right. Not really, but you know what I'm talking about. We're not going to limit the ability to move into that. One thing I'd like to begin to discuss as we prepare for this, and like you talked about the IDEA and the special education, is since some of these changes have been made and some of these new rights have been put in place, and we've tried to deliver the educational program to the students the best way that we can, I think I would actually like to somehow come up with what are we doing? What are we really doing with the special education program? And this isn't directly towards us. This is like more of a global piece. What are we actually doing with that? And what was the purpose of some of the changes that were made we're not going to do this by the breakfast. This is me just talking about the topics of why they're important for us to talk to our legislators about. So there are reasons why they're putting money into these things. And part of it, there could be goals that they might want to be reaching. Say inclusion, for instance. Okay, how is the inclusion piece working? Do we need to provide additional in-service training for our teachers? Are we looking at the reasons why we have more one-on-ones or paraprofessionals? Okay, is this an outcome or that came about because of the program that we're trying to put in place? And how is that going for the kids and the parents, and whether we're really delivering that? Because it's very difficult to understand the costs of special education. And the cost of special education here compared to the cost of special education in a district that only pays, say, $7,000 a year for their kids. So their 1.5 times is nothing, not nothing, but not that much. But the same services are being provided. So when we're talking about the federal government, which we're coming to, I never could wrap my head around this piece, okay? We put a bill into the federal government, we'll just say, for the amount of special education services that we offer. Each district, even if they offered the identical special education services, because of the fees and the teacher contracts and everything else, the costs are different. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. And the districts who have the ability to tax and the ability to spend money, it costs more. So the federal government would be giving those districts more money to provide the services. So I see that as some kind of a issue that we want to be able to look at and try to resolve with that. So that's all. And then I think it's a good conversation to get started.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If I could just piggyback on that. I mean, yeah, it's on. Yeah, no, it's fine. So I think it would be great. I mean, just looking at the schedule, 7:45 breakfast is served, 8 a.m. welcome, 8:15 group discussion, and then that's for an hour, then 9:15 closing, 9:30 school tour. So there's an hour there of group discussion. Just a sidebar, I haven't been involved in this before, so, and also I'm not going to be at the event, but I just want to note that. But just to piggyback off of what Chuck was saying, and also hearkening back to our previous meeting, I think it'd be great if we could work in somehow a brief discussion of perhaps the relationship between what is done on the federal level, the state level, and the district level. Some kind of brief discussion of that. And we could probably tie that into a discussion of meeting up to the standards of IDEA. So for example, what does the federal government contribute? What does the state government contribute? What do districts contribute? Township, municipalities contribute. I think just to piggyback off of what Chuck was saying, I think that'd be an excellent point of discussion. Given the time, it's only an hour, but it'd be quite interesting. I thought I also might mention that I'll be sure to, and I'm going to make a note here, Michael, to contact you and just to make sure, because I met one person at Scanlon's office. I can't recall her name off the top of my head, but I have her card, and I was in contact with her during our Hill meetings, and she is very well versed in education policy. She's actually worked on making education policy, and she's a lead person of Scanlon's team.
I think, was this person used to be on the school board?
I don't believe.
A school board member? Because there is a member of her staff that used to be a school board member.
Oh, okay.
She's from Upper Darby.
I think.
I don't want to.
Oh, you don't want to
Okay.
say where she, well.
I don't know. I don't know
think
the exact. I know that
Sure.
we've spoken recently. I know a Heather,
Okay.
who was on the school board.
Okay.
So it looks like there's a couple people who
Yeah,
have some
exactly.
educational
There's a few people, but
background experience.
I just want to mention that I will get that information to you and I'll connect you. Because she's she's a young lady. She's probably 30s or something. I don't know. Yeah. Thanks.
Chuck your mic.
I think what we want
Chuck
to
your
do.
mic.
I think what we want to do is to begin with, make sure, just as everybody knows the ground rules for the election policies that we have, the ground rules that we have for our breakfast is, we invite our legislators to come in and have a very positive, a very impactful discussion about the education process that's going on within the district and how we can help them help us. So that's the purpose of this. And because we have some new people that are coming in, our job really would be to educate them on some of the issues that we have and how they can help us. So we always strive to make it a win-win for everybody that would be included. And my understanding is that you're invited, and we hope that you can be there. And we'll clear a little, I haven't talked to Mike about this, but we'll make sure you get a little microphone time so you can say a couple words. Okay, we'll talk to you about that. Yep. And does anybody else have anything else that they'd like to?
No, I think as long, Abby, if you have anything you wanted to add first.
Sorry, I just have a clarification question. So when you say we're having a discussion, are we almost presenting them with our issues or our topics and they are saying things about it, or like we're giving them some issues that they will respond to?
So we usually set up and I'll be sending a formal agenda around and shortly. Once we get the agenda items solidified, which have been happening tonight, then we can send out a formal agenda, which actually will have them there, which we'll also send to the representatives. And that helps us kind of guide the conversation so that we can start with, here's topic A, let's discuss it. Legislators, can you please share with us what you might have information around this topic based upon the fact that you've received the information earlier and just what you might know. And then they might have questions for us about certain educational issues that we could answer. So that just kind of helps us get going in the conversation. And of course, as Mr. Babson, I think, said, or Mr. Madden said, if something comes up that we need to kind of divert and address that, we can do that too. It's not locked in stone.
Michael, won't there also be time for group or table discussions?
We talked about an idea, of having. We had initially thought, should we have table breakouts?
Mm-hmm.
And then we thought, why don't we instead set up the table in the same horseshoe that we always have, but group the people differently, so that we could have periods of time during it where they could turn and talk to each other, 4 or 5 different people from different areas of the district, principal, whomever, and a student, perhaps a legislator, and then they could share out potentially after that small talk.
Right, so there will be opportunities for you to talk directly to representatives, yeah, and administrators and other people. So that's.
And come hungry, because we're going to have good breakfast. I don't know if we officially did.
We can. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I just had a kind of a minor correction, no big deal. But it was, yeah, thanks. It was just about the report that I did, and I guess I probably could have worded it a little more clearly in my report, but I could have said something, and I'm referring, by the way, to the last sentence under 4.4. And basically, I want that to convey that in addition to the many things that I learned about IDEA and special education law, et cetera, I also learned this interesting point from the advocacy training. So, that wasn't the only thing that I learned, that in addition to all the I mean, I learned many, many things about special education law and specifically IDEA. So I just thought to make that minor tweak. So thank you. And again, that's probably because I wasn't clear enough in the report, so I appreciate that.
Okay, we have a motion to do that. So move the minutes as amended. Everybody in favor? Yeah, I don't like to say approval on the Okay, let's move the so moved.
So moved.
Seconded. I'll second it.
I'll third it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good. Two of us.
Public comment, please.
As always, I appreciate public comment. And I would also like to add to the legislative breakfast, if you have a chance to thank any of the state senators who may be there for their support of Senate Resolution 417 that allowed the state to do a study of school start times, and that study will be out in October, and how much we're looking forward to hearing that. But I think it's always important to thank them for the things they've done, as well as encouraging them to do other things.
Very good.
The other piece I would like to add to that, and I know this is nothing new, and I'm sure Abby knows about this as well, that I think it's important that people who work in the schools remind our elected officials that our students are more than numbers and sets of data. And I think sometimes when we are focused on accountability, we forget that this is a human endeavor, and we really need to underscore that, so that, you know, IEPs and special education, or whoever it is in our schools, has to be seen as an individual with unique needs and special talents. Thank you.
Do we have anybody calling in, Michael? Okay, I'd like to get a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, very good.
Wow, a record.